What if you could read the secret diary of one of the most powerful men in history, a diary that's 800 years old? Well, today, we're diving into the Kinkai Wakashu. And let me tell you, this ancient poetry collection is way more than just a historical document. It's the desperate cry of a young man trapped in a gilded cage. So let's get right to the heart of this. The author, Minamoto no Sanetomo, had the title of Shogun, right? The supreme military ruler of all of Japan. You'd think he had it all, but in reality, he was a prisoner, a total puppet who is terrified for his life every single day. So how can you be at the very top, the peak of power, and be completely powerless at the same time? Well, that's the tragedy we're going to unpack.
All right, to really get his poetry, you have to understand the world he lived in. We're going back to 13th century Kamakura Japan. And honestly, you can just picture Game of Thrones, because the political climate was just as ruthless and bloody. No joke.
See, this was a brand new era. Power wasn't with the fancy aristocrats anymore. It was all about the hardened samurai warriors. Their capital, Kamakura, was basically a fortress city, and the main rule was simple: might is right. Betrayal? That was just another Tuesday. Purges and assassinations? Just another tool in the political toolbox. We're talking about a time when families would turn on each other. Parents would literally kill their own kids just to grab more power. And this is the world Sanetomo was born into.
So let's zoom in on the boy at the center of this whole storm. His story isn't about some mighty ruler. It's about a lonely kid trapped in a cage made of gold, forced to be this big symbol while his entire life was being controlled by everyone but him.
Just look at this timeline. It tells you everything you need to know about how tragic and short his life was. He's made Shogun at just 12 years old. At 20, he finds the one thing that gives him any comfort: poetry. At 26, a desperate attempt to escape fails. And then, just 1 year later, at 27, it's all over.
His isolation was just absolute. The real power wasn't his. It was held by his own mother, Hojo Masako, and her family. I mean, can you imagine that? Even your mom is part of the political machine that's got you trapped. For Sanetomo, every single adult was either trying to use him or trying to kill him. He had absolutely no one he could trust.
So what do you do when you're trapped, silenced, and completely alone? You find another way to speak. And for Sanetomo, that came from a totally fateful discovery, an ancient book that gave him the voice he never, ever had in the real world.
He stumbled upon the Mujo. This was a poetry collection from 500 years before his time. Now, the poetry he was used to was all delicate, technical, very proper. But this was something else entirely. It was raw, it was direct, it was powerful, and kind of wild. It was like hearing the unfiltered voices of ancient people just shouting their true feelings.
And this discovery changed everything for him. Before the Mujo, Sanetomo's poems were, graceful and followed all the rules. But after, wow, he completely adopted that ancient, wild style. He must have realized it was the only language strong enough to hold all his anxiety, his anger, and his despair. As Sanetomo got into his late 20s, you could just feel the world around him tightening like a noose. He knew his time was running out, and you can see it in his poetry, this growing sense that a violent end was coming for him. He just felt this heavy weight of destiny, like his entire family, the Minamoto clan, was doomed to end with him. He even planned this crazy, desperate escape. He had a massive ship built to flee to China, but it was a total disaster. The thing wouldn't even float. With that last hope gone, he accepted his fate. He started frantically compiling his poems into the Kinkai Wakashu. This was his last stand, a race against time to leave behind some proof that he was ever here at all.
The end came on a snowy night. He was at a big ceremony at the Tsuruga-oka Hashimango shrine. As he was coming down the stone steps, he was ambushed and killed. And the assassin? It was his own nephew, who'd been manipulated into doing it. Just like that, at 27 years old, the shogun was dead, and the Minamoto bloodline was gone forever.
But here's the thing. The man's life was cut tragically short, but his soul's cry, the Kinkai Wakashu, it survived. It made it through wars, through centuries, and its power is as strong as ever. This is the legacy he fought so hard to leave behind.
And that brings us to his most famous poem. It is such a raw expression of his soul. The words are simple, but just feel the incredible power behind them. The waves from the vast ocean come crashing against the rocky shore with a thunderous roar. Look how they break, shatter, split, and scatter. It's so visceral, right? You can almost feel the ocean spray. But the real power, the heart of his pain, it's all in those last few verbs.
And this is what makes it a masterpiece. He's not just talking about the ocean. Those words, break, shatter, split, scatter, that's what he felt was happening to his own soul. He was the one being thrown against the rocks of reality by the waves of fate. He took his own personal tragedy and turned it into something so universal and beautiful.
So, why does this still hit so hard 800 years later? I think it's because his struggle feels, well, surprisingly modern. We all deal with huge forces we can't control, right? Societal pressure, big systems, or just plain old bad luck. Sanetomo's poetry gives a voice to that feeling of being completely powerless.
And that really leads us to the big question his life leaves us with. When you are totally, completely trapped by your circumstances, when you just can't change reality, what do? How do you stop your spirit from being crushed?
Sanetomo found his answer. Instead of picking up a sword, he picked up a brush. He took his deepest despair and turned it into powerful, beautiful art. He gave his pain a voice, and by doing that, he built a sanctuary inside himself that nobody could ever touch. He proved that even if you can't control your life, you can absolutely find freedom and dignity through what you create.